All right, what is this?
South Korean medical school professors and physicians at several hospitals have joined striking junior doctors to protest against the government's plan to increase medical school admissions. Now, at the same time, authorities have started notifying trainee doctors about the suspension of their medical licenses as the government begins to punish physicians for walking out on their jobs. CNA's Lim Yun-suk.
Apparently there's some gigantic protest for doctors in South Korea, but I'm not entirely sure. Jesus Christ, you guys. One track mind. I'm not entirely sure what it's about.
Has more from Seoul.
Medical school professors at Kangwon National University are the latest to join thousands of striking doctors in protest against the South Korean government's plan to increase the number of medical students in the coming years.
Oh. Wow. These guys, they just don't want competition for their jobs. Is that it? Is it literally just that? Sorry, we want to be like an exclusive upper class of wealthy, sort of the labor aristocracy.
They're also protesting against the university's decision to join dozens of other medical schools in seeking more than the 2,000 additional places the government had planned to allocate in total.
So they're literally just upset that there's going to be more doctors. Like, that is the thing that they're upset about. South Korea deploys military reinforcements to hospitals hit by doctor strike. Nearly 12,000 trainee doctors from 100 hospitals have walked out over government reform plans. Increase the number of places available in middle school, tackle shortages amid a rapidly aging population. It's really just that simple. They're just greedy. They're just greedy pieces of shit.
According to the health ministry, 40 universities nationwide with medical schools requested an increase of more than 3,000 spots from next year.
대학의 신청 결과는 평가 인증 기준 준수 등 의료의 질 확보를 전제로 2025년에 당장 늘릴 수 있는 규모가 2,000명을 월등히 상회한다는 것을 재확인한 것입니다.
That's true.
The government, however, will keep the numbers to 2,000.
This is ridiculously common from this kind of highly trained professional work. Yeah, the guilds did the same thing back in the medieval era, you know? Anytime there's a push to, like, expand the availability of very exclusive, highly paid, sort of like labor aristocracy work, the existing labor aristocracy gets really upsetty spaghetti.
Briefing with the foreign media in Seoul on Tuesday, one doctor who asked not to be named argued that the request was made by the universities despite opposition by the medical schools.
Actually, I think there's a difference between the dean of the school and the dean of the medical school. So the dean of the medical schools are saying that we don't have the capacity to educate more students. However, the dean of the schools are saying they can accept more.
The doctors also say the government's threat to punish doctors is illegal.
Are they bourgeoisie or petite bourgeoisie? Neither. Bourgeoisie doesn't mean you have money, it means you own the means of production. Doctors belong to the labor aristocracy. People who work for their money, they sell their labor they are a part of the proletariat, but because of the incredible privilege of their station, they have the, there's a distinction beyond other proletariat. Another like category there would be lawyers. Lawyers are a part of the labor aristocracy as well.
정지 가처분 신청을 내도록 준비하고 있습니다. 특히 업무 개시 명령은 우리 전공의선생들에게 해당되질 않습니다. 왜냐하면 업무 개시 명령은 파업한 사람들한테 내는 거거든요. 개인의 일신상의 이유로 사직한 사람에게 업무 개시 명령을 내리고 복지부 직원들과 경찰을 병원에 투입해서.
What about artists? Oh, what about artists? Yeah. I'm sure. Is there any good reason for this at all?
South Korea's government has threatened to arrest thousands of striking doctors if they don't return to work by the end of Thursday. It also says it will suspend their medical licenses. The doctors have been protesting against the government's plans to increase the number of people admitted to medical school each year. Our correspondent Jean McKenzie has sent us an update, but also she joins us live from Seoul.
Gotta say, vibes on this one, like the lighting, the everything, vibes aren't good. Don't like this.
Jean, so what is the situation now with these doctors? Because it's very difficult. On the one hand, there is a lack of supply. On the other hand, there is resistance from doctors concerning more doctors being brought onto the payroll.
Why?
Yeah, look, it is a slightly unusual one because the doctors here are saying that they're overworked, they're underpaid, and so therefore you wouldn't expect them necessarily to be protesting at the idea of more doctors being added into the system. But how it works here is that healthcare is heavily privatised and doctors work for profit. They get paid per procedure. So they don't like the idea of more medical doctors coming into the system because they think that that would just mean more competition for the work that they are carrying out, and so they would see their wages reduced. The government, on the other hand, is arguing that South Korea desperately needs more doctors because the population here is ageing and you're already seeing shortages of care, so particularly in rural areas or in emergency care. But the doctors say that just putting more doctors into the system wouldn't necessarily address these shortages because what you have is doctors sort of flooding into the areas that are more lucrative, for example, cosmetic surgery. So just adding more doctors doesn't mean that you're going to be able to plug those gaps.
That's bullshit. The idea that all of these doctors are striking because they disagree with the practical efficacy of just allowing more doctors in, that's total bullshit. There's no, oh yeah, like let's all do a mass walkout because we're worried that a bunch of new doctors might become plastic surgeons or whatever. This is a very this is an example where you can use market forces to your benefit, you know? Like if they just make a bunch of plastic surgeons, they're not going to get any work because there are too many plastic surgeons. You've oversaturated that market, you know? Create the systems that would allow them to distribute themselves more broadly and you should be fine.
The areas that are already competitive are going to be made more competitive.
Yep,
so that's the sort of
competitive. Yep, see, that's it. They just don't want competition. They want to be able to just sit in their hospitals and their practices and continue to have a, you know, effective monopoly. The idea that there's already like a flat limit on the number, what is it, 2,000? Look, the government plans to raise South Korea's yearly medical school admission cap by 2,000 from the current 3,058. Isn't that weird? Like, medical school admission cap? Pardon me for not being entirely familiar with how South Korean schooling comes up, but I don't think, why is there a cap? This is a pretty important industry, you know? Nurses and pharmacists are striking for better conditions. This is this is a totally different thing. This is U.S. pharmacy workers. What does that have to do with what we're looking at? I'm pretty sure we have the same in the Netherlands, but it's way higher than and depends on the specialization. Only like 10 neurosurgeons per year. But why? I guess, I don't know. There's a cap in the USA too? Really? USA medical school admission cap. The AAMC's annual survey shows student body growth won't alleviate the looming physician shortage till shortfalls in residency and clinical training sites also addressed. But this isn't a government set cap, right? This is just a limit in the available residency. Because yeah, it's going up every year. This is different. This is just like how much can be accommodated in residency, whereas in South Korea, the government literally is just like, nope, no more than that, you know, which is odd. In America, the residency is subsidized by the government, but it is still going up.
Opposing arguments that you really have at the moment playing out between the government and these junior doctors who make up a large proportion of the staff at the big teaching university hospitals here. So they feel that they're bearing the brunt of a system which they say is broken, and that's what's leading them to be overworked and underpaid.
How sympathetic is the public?
Not particularly sympathetic. I mean, generally the people here, they want to see more doctors. You know, people, particularly in rural areas, they're the ones that are not being able to see their physicians. And so it's very hard to argue to the public that more doctors is a bad thing. It's just an argument that doesn't really make much sense to people. And I think that's what's been one of the doctors' problems really here, is trying to get the public on side. And this is what's given. Yeah,
it is pretty difficult to get the public on your side when the thing you're protesting is more doctor availability in a time of increasing wait lists for medical appointments. You know, it is true that that's a pretty uphill battle that you have to fight. It looks like they're already working to suspend the licenses of nearly 5,000 junior doctors who have resigned and stopped working to protest government medical training reforms. Dude, how fearful of competition must you be to resign? Like, they're not just striking, they're resigning. This is like, You know what it is? It's because they know there are too few doctors. So if they resign, they can just get those jobs back. These arrogant pieces of shit are so reliant on the artificial scarcity that they're protesting to maintain that they can just, oh, we can leave, we can come back, I can do whatever, who cares, you know? These guys. I'm sorry, I am so anti this protest. I hate them. I already don't like doctors to begin with. Send in the military. We're going to bring all these medical doctors in. I believe your view is misjudged. I mean, maybe. Admittedly, I'm only just hearing about this. It just seems like pretty bad.
24 of the nearly 10,000 trainees who resign are back. The remaining risk prosecution and suspension of their medical licenses.
There have been no formal discussions so far. Yonhap News Agency reports that the government invited at least 94 doctors to a meeting yesterday, but only 5 or 6 turned up. Police have vowed stern measures.
Demon Mama asked, hey, what the f does that mean? Why is it when people disagree with me, you just get weird? Are you afraid? I would be much less likely to lash out at you if you would just express a disagreement. Vosh, you actually hate doctors in general? I mean, a lot of them are arrogant sociopaths a little bit. Yeah. My general impression of doctors and nurses is pretty low. I think of them basically as like the more educated variant of like cops in a lot of ways, where there are people who just want to seek power over others. It's obviously not all doctors and nurses. Also, cops are structurally bad, whereas obviously you need doctors and nurses. It's more just a vibe feel kind of thing. But I'm allowed to feel vibes. Okay, that's kind of insane, lol. I'm allowed to have my vibes. Jesus, what kind of bad medical experiences have you had? All good. So many doctors I've known are rich and lazy. Yeah, I guess when I think of a doctor, I guess like it's a profession that is subject to a lot of the general issues that other labor aristocracy professions tend to. That is to say, past a point, you get like wealthy and arrogant enough that you start being a hindrance to the profession in a way. Lawyers do the exact same thing, though lawyers do it worse, I would say, than doctors. Vosh, I've had to argue with that a person selfishly motivated wouldn't put up with dealing with the patients that long seems flimsy. I mean, lawyers deal with clients all the time, you know. I was a healer in World of Warcraft, okay? I was Resto Shami, all right? I have experience in the medical profession. Thank you. Honestly, Annie. Yeah, exactly. Sir Perolito makes an excellent point. Okay, here's my argument. Have you met a med student? I rest my case. Thank you. Moving on.
Ahead of large-scale rallies set to take place in Seoul this weekend. That includes one by the nation's largest doctors' lobby group, the Korean Medical Association. Around 25,000 people are expected to participate. And the government has said the association...
Correction, the AMA advocates against the U.S. cap, which is a budget spending cap on resident substances. Okay, yeah. So this is two completely different things, okay? The government saying you can only have this many med students is very different than the U.S. government saying we are only willing to spend this much on resident subsidies. Those are very different. In one side of things, the South Korean government is arbitrarily putting a cap on how many doctor or med students there can be. And the U.S. government is merely limiting the amount they're spending on subsidies. Totally, totally different. I mean, I agree in raising the limit with the budget spending cap for resident subsidies, but they're definitely different things.
Which represents mostly private practitioners, is not the right body to address the trainee doctors' concerns.
Well, trainee doctors have been protesting the government's plan to increase the number of students.
In what way are those different? Are you kidding me? You don't see any difference between a government saying, no, you can't have any more than this number of medical students. Just no. And the American government saying, we're willing to allocate this amount to subsidize residency for the students. You don't see any difference between like the difference is the United States subsidizes corn production, but not to an infinite amount. We're only willing to subsidize corn production so much. But we don't have a government law saying you can only make this much corn. That is the difference.
Admitted to medical schools each year by 2000, or around 67%. The young doctors say the government should first address pay as well as working conditions before trying to increase the number of physicians. Major general hospitals nationwide are grappling with the absence of junior doctors. Operations, including surgeries, emergency rooms, and intensive care units, have been significantly reduced.
I spoke with Dr.
Sarcastic banana, that's irrelevant. You're not understanding the point.
Wang Jinheng, a pathology professor at the Seoul National University College of Medicine, that she's someone who mediated the dialogue between doctors and the government in the initial days of the protests. It was also part of a doctors' association. Dr. Chung blames inadequate government policies for the current situation rather than the shortage of doctors, and she doesn't see any agreement until the general elections in April.
How bad is the pay doctors get in South Korea? That seems important to this convo. Average pay doctor, South Korea. 27 to 84 million of their currency per year. In ordinary dollar terms, oh wow, here's an article from the Korea Herald. Korean doctors rake in sky-high pay amid shortages. Korea has the second lowest number of physicians among members of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, leading to some of the highest doctors' wages among surveyed member nations, because there's a relationship between the scarcity of labor and the height of their wages, so they want to keep labor scarce so they get paid more. Yep. Doctors in Korea earn the most among 28 member countries that provide related data. Following Korea, the highest earners are in the Netherlands, Germany, Ireland, the UK. The US was among the countries for which data was not provided. So we don't know about the United States, but of countries providing this data, the Korean doctors get paid the most. 60% more than the OECD average. That's for salaried specialists. Korean GP salaries, general practitioners, rank 6th. For self-employed doctors, the annual income is $300,000 as of 2020. That was the second highest after Belgium. The primary reason for Korean doctors earning more than their counterparts in other OECD nations appears to be the relative scarcity of medical professionals in the face of significant demand for healthcare services. I wonder why they don't want more medical students joining. I'm thinking. This is like a violation of the Hippocratic Oath, man. It's so disgusting. They literally want South Koreans to suffer and die waiting for doctor's appointments so they can maintain their sky-high salaries. Them.
그렇게 높지 않을 것으로 생각되고 시간이 지날수록 이제 고민하는 전공의들 많을 텐데 전공의 선생님들은 지금 복귀하지 않겠다. 우리는 이 나라에서 더 이상 필수 의료 수련을 받지 않겠다 하는 것이 대다수라고 알고 있습니다. 지금 80% 정도의 전공의 선생들이 돌아오지 않고 있습니다.
지금 무엇보다도 의대 증원 인심 논란의 핵심인데요, 교수님. 정부 쪽 입장을 들어보면 대한민국은 지금 27년간 단 한 명
Medical school admissions from the government's perspective, South Korea has not increased the number of doctors for 27 years and the population is aging. When considering the retirement of elderly doctors, they say there is urgent need for more doctors. What's the reason behind the strong opposition from doctors? The number of doctors is in fact increasing, although the medical school enrollment hasn't increased. Back when I enrolled in 1988, there were 47,000 of us. Now there are 150,000 doctors. Okay, right off the bat, disingenuous bullshit from the person speaking right now. It's not about whether there are more doctors. Obviously, there are more doctors than there were before. It's that the rate of the increase of doctors hasn't gone up. An increase of 100,000 over the span of 25 years. The government's assertion is that
5년 동안 10만 명이 늘었습니다. 근데 정부에서 강구하는 건 인구가 줄어들고 있는
the population is decreasing. When I was attending, 1 million people took the university entrance exam. Now it's 400,000. And currently,
그리고 현재 태어나는 신생아는 20만 명입니다.
there are only 200,000 newborns. Despite the declining population, the number of doctors is increasing. She's denying the shortage. This bitch is denying the shortage. Literally, like, the shortage of doctors in South Korea is well known. And she's like, well, there are fewer South Koreans than before. So, this isn't, you can't argue against the fact that South Korea needs more doctors. Vosh, the reporting you're listening to is incredibly misleading. The strike started in February over low pay and overworking conditions for junior doctors. The government responded by saying they would train more doctors over a few years to address the overworking, which didn't satisfy the strikers, obviously. Wouldn't that reduce the overworking? If there were more of them, they wouldn't be overworked as much. It seems to me like this is a separate issue, kind of, or maybe the issue has, like, warped out of, past its initial scope, you know? Because the walkouts right now are not just this. Doctors say the country doesn't need more doctors. They just need more pay and better working conditions. No. Okay, nope. These guys, them from the beginning. Are you kidding me? Recent polls show the public support the increase in the number of doctors, but doctors say the country doesn't need more of them. They just need more pay and better working conditions. Of course, it takes a lot of hard work and time to become a doctor, but it's a respected profession, and they have their pride. He says the legal work limit for South Korean doctors is 88 hours a week, but he's worked as many as 126 hours. Would increasing the number of doctors not help fix that? Also, I know how doctors are. You're not working 126 hours a week. You're getting sucked. You're getting sloppy toppy while you're in your office waiting the mandated 90 minutes in between each appointment. I'm on to you. He argues the government wants to train more doctors, not to lighten trainees' burdens, but to staff new profit-making hospitals. Are you... Hospitals are saving up money to continue building branches, expanding and creating franchises. It's exploitation. This is modern slavery. Hospitals training more doctors and opening more hospitals. It's unbelievable. This is like modern slavery. These people are all Hitler. These are all Hitlerites. Them. 50 doctors more for every existing doctor in South Korea. Make every person in South Korea a doctor. You won't even need to go to the doctor because everyone will be their own doctor all the time. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. These are the Asian equivalent of European farmers, but they're somehow worse. Oh my God. This is modern slavery. Kim Jae-hun leads a civic group calling for more public health care. He notes that about 90% of South Korean hospitals are in the private sector. He argues that the way to get more doctors to work in remote areas and less lucrative medical fields is to build more public hospitals and pay doctors to work there. I agree. You will need more doctors so that you can put doctors there. If you want to build more public hospitals, you will also need more doctors in those hospitals. But he says both doctors' groups and the government agree that that wouldn't be profitable for them. That makes sense to me. Either way, you need more doctors. I want, first of all, every South Korean worker has terrible working conditions, for one. But also, I want the doctors there to have better working conditions. The best way to help improve working conditions is to make sure there are enough doctors, that you're not being worked to death, and also make it publicly owned so that you're not being sort of ground down to the bone for private profit. Even though medical school enrollment may not have risen, South Korea has seen the fastest increase in the number of doctors among OECD countries. While doctors say there's no shortage, 89% of the Korean population feels there is and wishes for an increase. Where does this discrepancy stem from? It's because everyone gathers in the capital region. There's a shortage in rural areas. There are no people. Naturally, there won't be any doctors. What? If everyone gathers in the capital region, then wouldn't the majority say there is enough? This aspect needs to be addressed through public health care. For example, Jinju Medical Center was shut down due to financial losses. I agree with public health care, yeah. Population centralization in the capital region.
그렇다면 제도적인 미비인 거지 숫자적인 문제가 아니다 이 말씀이신가요?
I don't know, man. It seems to me like the point these doctors are making is that this problem should only be solved in a way that couldn't possibly threaten their profits, their income.